Meanwhile, Below Zero differs on the points above, making the game essentially a relaxing romp. It also amps up the color and lighting in the respective biomes, which makes me think the developers basically position the game as an almost walking simulator, hence targeting a more casual crowd. And I respond to V-Sector, and I'm like, And I don't think I would have even minded a more casual style Subnautica game. I think they absolutely could have made a laid-back Subnautica game that softened the entry gap for new players, while also still making said game good. However, instead of being a positive, or even just a simpler point of access, instead it just ends up being one other point of contention on top of so many others. I have a Let's Talk playlist on my YouTube channel that is a 30-hour plus long series of videos where I talk about and discuss the problems with Below Zero's gameplay and story in detail. And these videos will be adding to that playlist. Now, when I say 30 hours plus, that means you could not sit down and watch every video in my playlist in one day. Because one day is 24 hours. And if you sat in the bathtub, or if you sat on the toilet and you just shit and pissed and you ate while you were watching my videos, if you hooked yourself up to an IV and you just you marathoned my whole playlist, you couldn't watch it in one day. It's more than a day's worth of length. You'd have to spend at least 2 or 3 days, possibly even longer, because people have lives. People have jobs, family, children, lovers, and their own personal life. I think it's retarded and ridiculous to expect anyone to sit and watch and view my whole playlist 30 hours straight. That's ridiculous. But trust me, I don't just have one video that's an hour and a half long. No, I've got 180 videos in this playlist that are 30 hours plus in length. Boom. Now, the Great Warper replies to Dream Rider, incorrect in referring to show's over. He thought the show was over, but then I replied, the show is not over. So the Great Warper addresses me. And again, this is weird, because before I reported all the nasty posts that were harassing the OP, this was on page 2 and 3. So I'm like, hey, Steam, there's a lot of abuse going on in this thread. Could you remove these abusive posts? And Steam's like, hey, okay, I guess we will. So, the Great Warper, I'm assuming you also agree with the woke arguments and how there's no challenge. Really? He responded to this wall of critical text and his response to all that. I'm assuming you also agree with the woke arguments and how there's no challenge. Well, guess what? I addressed that seriously. Here's my response. One of those arguments is in very questionable territory. I'm not trying to get banned again on another forum because, oh no, I'm talking about no words. I leave viewpoints and opinions on that subject to others. For argument's sake, you can put woke into a good game, and it'll still be a good game. A game is like a pizza. Everything else about it, like genre, length, gameplay, style, etc., they're just toppings. If there's a topping I do not like on a good pizza, I remove the toppings. A good game stands on its own merit, faults and flaws included. And basically, the translation, because that's coded, basically I'm saying, yes, I agree, the game is woke. But I wouldn't care about the game being woke if it was a good fucking game. But it's a bad fucking game that's woke. And I could bring about, hey, I know why it's woke, because I've got proof and evidence about the developers. But, I'm not in the mood to have another one of my forums, one of my hubs. I'm not in the mood to be banned from another hub just because, that you can't talk about that, but other people can. I'm learning, people. As for the other argument, the element of challenge, the argument itself can be misleading. I agree with it in some aspects, but disagree with another part of it. I'm making a video of this post because I really feel like I shut down all. I really feel like I'm shutting down this argument. I'm giving a definitive answer. I went into the Below Zero early access process as a seasoned Subnautica veteran. While I can still differentiate between something being hard or easy based on familiarity or experience, I still admit to a personal bias to some extent. If you're willing to accept my personal bias, then I'll share the rest of my thoughts on that. Yes, it is lacking in challenge. Super Mario Bros. 1 for the Nintendo set a type of standard. And the real Super Mario Bros. 2 for the Nintendo, not the Doki Doki Panic reskin most people got in their childhood. By the way, I loved that game, but it's not the real Mario 2. But I loved it anyway. But the lost levels. If you ever played Super Mario All-Stars on the Super Nintendo, one of the games is the lost levels. That's the real Mario 2, okay? It's almost a carbon copy of Super Mario Bros. 1. Yet, it was more challenging, even to people that played and beat and mastered Super Mario Bros. 1. I reject the argument that people only say Below Zero is too easy because they already played Subnautica. There is an existing history and list of game sequels that were more challenging than their predecessors. So just because you are familiar with the game's mechanics and gameplay loop, does not mean the next game in the series will necessarily be easier. It's possible, but not a written rule in stone. We have examples that refute that, such as my Mario example. The map is smaller. There are 2 in-game maps and these are all points on why the game is less challenging. There are 2 in-game maps for the player to find. There are fewer variety of Leviathans, fewer number of Leviathans, less depth. I'm so sorry. I apologize. I don't know why. I'm a rude bastard. Oh, shit. Inclusion of oxygen plants. Subtext. Yes, brain coral existed in Subnautica, but no. There are no line of brain coral plants set up specifically to allow you to bypass depth and O2 restrictions without the proper gear. Below Zero, oxygen plants that guide and lead a player to important areas, while also allowing the player to retrace their path back using the same trail of oxygen plants safely, and allows the player to bypass depth and O2 restrictions without proper gear. See the fact that some of said gear is beyond the depth gate needed to find it without the gear, henceforth the oxygen plants. The sea truck is more armored than the sea moth. You're given access to it sooner and given for free the push this button and makes the no-nos get boo-boos and ouchies and goes awaysies. Tablet keys are removed. The player no longer has to find and scan fragments and fabricate keys to gain access to restricted areas. Alan unlocks these areas for you automatically, and seeing as it's required to get him to beat the game essentially removes any challenge regarding gaining access to said restricted areas. The map is littered and smothered with edible flora that replenish hunger, quench thirst, heat your body up, and provides health replenishment. Holy shit. Whether you are on land or underwater, anywhere you are beyond the crystal caves and the red crystal caves, you are never far from an edible plant. Even the sparse Arctic biomes in the east and west have convenient frozen anemone plants growing from the bottoms of iceberg to sustain on. And man, you don't need to cook and eat fish at all. The whole game is just like eat plants. The new introduced cold mechanic would be challenging,